The ancient Egyptians built pyramids. The Romans engineered aqueducts. The Vikings carved their legendary longships. Some civilizations are so deeply ingrained in history that even the most casual observer could name their greatest achievements. But history isn't just a neatly curated list of famous empires. It's a sprawling, chaotic timeline filled with cultures that thrived, innovated, and then, just like that, disappeared. We tend to focus on the giants of history, the ones with towering monuments and written records. But what about the others? The civilizations that left behind little more than ruins and riddles. Some were wiped out by war, some by nature, and some simply faded into mystery. These lost societies could have changed the world in ways we'll never fully grasp. Yet instead of pages dedicated to them in textbooks, all we have are scattered clues, half-buried artifacts, and questions that may never be answered. So join us on a journey to explore 15 lost civilizations that you won't hear about in school, starting with number 15, the Olmecs. If you know the Olmecs, it's probably because of their giant stone heads, the kind that look like they belong in a lost Indiana Jones scene. These 10-ton sculptures, carved from solid basalt, are pretty much all that's left of one of Mesoamerica's first great civilizations. And while modern pop culture has turned them into everything from game show props to Simpsons relics, the reality of the Olmecs is far more intriguing. They thrived in what is now Mexico, spreading their influence for nearly 1,000 years before vanishing around 300 BCE. Their culture set the stage for future civilizations like the Maya and Aztecs, but unlike those groups, the Olmecs didn't leave behind many written records, or at least none that we've been able to decipher. The jungles have swallowed most of their secrets, leaving historians to piece together their story from a few scattered artifacts, and of course, those ever-watchful stone faces. History is bizarre. Number 14, the people of Punt. No, this isn't a hidden kingdom of American football players. Punt was one of ancient Egypt's most valuable trading partners, yet no one knows exactly where it was. Egyptian records describe it as a land overflowing with riches, gold, ivory, exotic animals, and fragrant incense. Pharaohs launched grand expeditions there, returning with treasures that fueled their empire's economy. And yet, modern archaeologists have no idea where Punt actually was. Theories place it somewhere in modern-day Somalia, Eritrea, or even Yemen, but no physical evidence, no cities, no ruins, no definitive proof has ever been found. Stranger still, Punt never seemed to be invaded or engage in warfare. A land that wealthy, sitting in the middle of Africa, would have been a prime target for conquest, yet history remains silent on that front. If anyone ever truly found Punt's location, they didn't bother writing it down. Or worse, they kept it a secret. Number 13, the bell beaker culture. When historians don't know what to call you, they name you after your stuff. That's exactly what happened with the bell beaker culture, a group of people who lived in England around 4,600 years ago and were named for the distinct pottery they left behind. But they were more than just fancy pot makers. Evidence suggests they were some of Britain's earliest metalworkers and may have played a major role in the early construction of Stonehenge. Unlike other lost civilizations, the bell beaker people weren't entirely wiped out. They were assimilated. Over time, they mixed with other cultures, leaving behind little to distinguish them as their own group. What we do know is that they had an advanced understanding of farming, herded livestock, and traded metals across Europe. But beyond their beakers and some scattered remains, their legacy is still frustratingly incomplete. Were they early architects of England's most famous monument? Well, possibly. But time, as always, has kept its secrets. So, we don't know yet. Number 12, Nabta Playa. Deep in the unforgiving Nubian desert, long before pyramids were even a thought, the people of Nabta Playa were busy studying the stars. More than 11,000 years ago, they built intricate stone structures, arranged with such precision that they made Stonehenge look like a rough draft. These weren't just random rock piles, they were some of the first known attempts to track the movements of the sky. Despite their astronomical genius, the Nabta Playa civilization left behind little else. No grand cities, no towering monuments, just a few scattered clues buried under the desert sun. Some believe they were the ancestors of later Nile Valley cultures, laying the intellectual groundwork for Egyptian astronomy. Others think they simply vanished, their legacy erased by the shifting sands. Whatever the case, one thing is clear. These ancient desert dwellers were looking to the heavens long before anyone else, and then, just as mysteriously as they appeared, they were gone. Number 11. The Silla. Some lost civilizations make you desperate to know more. Others? Well, maybe it's best they stay lost. The Silla ruled Korea for over 1,000 years, yet barely left behind any human remains, mainly because Korea's acidic soil has a bad habit of dissolving bones. One of the few skeletons ever recovered belonged to a woman with an unsettlingly elongated skull. Archaeologists claim it was natural, but come on, that's some horror movie material right there. Aside from that, the Silla were master goldsmiths, creating some of the most stunning royal crowns and jewelry of the ancient world. Their kingdom was sophisticated, wealthy, and powerful. Yet their history feels like a ghost story. Just whispers of gold, a few scattered relics, and a name that once carried weight across the Korean peninsula. What else is buried beneath the soil, lost forever? Maybe we don't need to find out, and that's for our better. Now let's talk about Number 10. The Sangsingdui. China's history is one of the most meticulously recorded in the world, but that doesn't mean there aren't a few missing pages. The Sangsingdui civilization is one of those gaps, a powerful culture that seemed to flourish, thrive, and then disappear entirely around 3,000 years ago. Their existence was completely unknown until 1929, when a farmer stumbled upon a buried treasure trove of intricate jade, bronze masks, and gold artifacts, unlike anything seen before in Chinese history. So, what happened to them? Modern geological studies suggest that a massive earthquake may have struck their region, potentially rerouting the rivers that sustained them. Without water, the civilization collapsed, and its people either scattered or perished. But here's the strange part. No historical Chinese records even mention them. It's as if an entire society, with its own customs, art, and beliefs, was completely wiped from history overnight. Were they erased, assimilated, or simply forgotten? We may never know. Alight now, let's talk about Number 9. The Austronesians of Madagascar. When you look at a map, it seems obvious that Madagascar, off the coast of Africa, should have been settled by African civilizations. But that's not what happened. Instead, the original inhabitants of Madagascar weren't from Africa at all. They were Austronesians, a seafaring people from modern-day Indonesia and Borneo, located over 4,000 miles away. How they made this impossible-sounding journey remains one of history's greatest mysteries. Linguistic studies confirm that the Malagasy language is closely related to those spoken in Southeast Asia. Genetic evidence backs it up, too. But how did an entire civilization cross the Indian Ocean centuries before Europeans had even figured out long-distance navigation? And why did they choose Madagascar of all places? We don't have those answers. What we do know is that this migration was the equivalent of Columbus arriving in the Caribbean and discovering an island full of Norwegians. The odds of it happening? Almost impossible. And yet, here we are. Number 8. The Khmer Empire. The Khmer Empire, also known as the Angkor civilization, was one of Southeast Asia's most powerful and sophisticated societies, thriving between the 9th and 15th centuries CE. Stretching across modern Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam, the empire was marked by massive temple complexes, including the legendary Angkor Wat, intricate trade networks with India and China, and an advanced water management system that sustained its growing population. But for all its grandeur, the empire collapsed almost as mysteriously as it had risen. In 1431, the kingdom of Ayutthaya invaded Angkor, shifting the region's power from Hindu monarchies to community-driven Buddhist rule. However, evidence suggests that environmental disasters, including devastating droughts and monsoons, had already weakened the capital long before the invasion. Economic shifts toward maritime trade also lured people away from inland farming settlements. By the time the city was fully abandoned, it had been in decline for nearly a century. Number 7. The Anasazi. The Anasazi people, ancestors of the modern Pueblo tribes, were one of North America's most advanced pre-Columbian cultures. Flourishing in the Four Corners region, where Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado meet, from around 1500 BCE, they built breathtaking cliffside dwellings, entire cities carved into the walls of canyons. Some of these structures could house thousands, with intricate irrigation systems sustaining their people in the arid desert. Then, in the 13th century CE, something changed. Their once accessible dwellings became fortresses, built high in cliffs with limited entry points. This suggests they were under threat. Whether from warfare, prolonged drought, or internal strife remains unknown. By the end of the 1300s, the Anasazi had all but disappeared. Their descendants, including the Hopi and Zuni, retained parts of their culture, but the civilization itself was gone. Did they migrate? Were they wiped out? Well, no one knows for sure. Number 6. Çatalhöyük. Long before the pyramids, long before Rome, there was Çatalhöyük. Considered one of the world's earliest permanent settlements, this prehistoric town in modern-day Turkey was first inhabited around 6,500 BCE. At its peak, it held an estimated 8,000 people, all crammed into a dense, maze-like community with no streets or centralized public spaces. Instead, houses were built directly next to and on top of one another, with entryways through the roofs. Despite the claustrophobic setup, Çatalhöyük was a thriving center of trade, agriculture, and spiritual rituals. But around 5,650 BCE, something happened. Whether it was climate change, disease, or resource depletion, the settlement saw a sharp decline, eventually being abandoned altogether. Unlike later civilizations, the people of Çatalhöyük left no written records, leaving historians to piece together their story from ruins alone. Was this the world's first city? Or just an early experiment in civilization? Either way, it remains one of archaeology's most fascinating puzzles. Number 5. Göbekli Tepe. If you've ever watched Ancient Aliens, you've probably heard of Göbekli Tepe. It's a site so old, so advanced for its time, that it has fueled endless speculation about extraterrestrial intervention. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. Located in modern-day Turkey, this massive temple complex is between 12,000 and 13,000 years old, meaning it predates Stonehenge by about 6,000 years and was built before agriculture was even a thing. How did hunter-gatherers with no known permanent settlements pull off such an architectural feat? The site is filled with intricately carved stone pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in circular formations. It was clearly a place of significance, possibly religious, but the people who built it eventually buried it themselves for reasons unknown. Was it a temple? A ceremonial center? A forgotten civilization's last effort to preserve something sacred? Whatever the truth is, Göbekli Tepe is rewriting everything we thought we knew about early human civilization. Number 4. Greenland's Vikings. In 985 CE, Eric the Red led 25 boats to Greenland, founding 2 Viking settlements. For centuries, they herded livestock, built stone churches, and traded walrus ivory. At their peak, around 5,000 people called Greenland home. But by the early 1400s, they had vanished. The Little Ice Age made survival nearly impossible, freezing trade routes and shortening growing seasons. Demand for walrus ivory collapsed, stripping them of their economic lifeline. Did they return to Scandinavia, starve, fall to disease, or conflict with the Inuit? No one knows. By 1721, when missionaries arrived, all that remained were ruins. So even the powerful can be wiped out. Number 3. The Jomon people. The Jomon people, ancestors of Japan's Ainu, thrived for over 10,000 years, starting around 14,000 BCE. Unlike typical hunter-gatherers, they crafted intricate pottery, domesticated dogs, and even prioritized sanitation, constructing pit toilets in their villages. Some evidence suggests they even trained dogs to use them. They lived semi-sedentary lifestyles, building permanent homes and developing early agriculture. Their culture remained distinct for millennia until outside influences, including rice farming Yayoi migrants, gradually absorbed them. Despite this, the Jomon left an indelible mark on Japan's heritage, shaping traditions and genetics still present today. Number 2. Derinkuyu. Deep beneath the Anatolian Plateau in Turkey lies one of the most mind-blowing discoveries of modern archaeology, Derinkuyu, an ancient underground city capable of housing more than 20,000 people. Built across 18 levels and reaching 85 meters below ground, this subterranean labyrinth was a fortress of secrecy and survival. But who built it and why? Some scholars believe Derinkuyu was originally constructed by the Hittites, a powerful Bronze Age civilization that collapsed around 1200 BCE. If true, the city may have been used as a refuge during war, famine, or natural disasters. Others argue that it was built much later in response to invaders sweeping through Anatolia. Regardless, Derinkuyu was a marvel of engineering, complete with ventilation shafts, wells, and food storage areas. It remained in use for centuries, with early Christians even seeking shelter there from persecution. So, nothing lasts forever. Number 1. The Indus Civilization. One of the world's great ancient civilizations, the Indus Valley Civilization, aka the Harappan Civilization, flourished across present-day India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan between 2500 and 1000 BCE, 3300 and 1300 BCE. At its height, it was home to over 5 million people, boasting well-planned cities, advanced drainage systems, and a standardized system of weights and measures. And yet, despite all this sophistication, the civilization vanished, leaving behind a mystery that still baffles historians today. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus civilization has no deciphered written records. Archaeologists have found thousands of inscribed seals, but their language remains unreadable. What's even stranger is that their cities, places like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, show little evidence of warfare or destruction. Instead, theories suggest climate change, shifting river patterns, or prolonged drought may have gradually eroded their way of life. By 1300 BCE, their cities were abandoned, their script left untranslated, and their story, for the most part, erased from history. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.